Hi, everyone. This is Todd Boudreau, the Director of Content at Beyond Type 1. We've been getting a lot of questions lately about mental health as it relates to coronavirus. With the holidays coming up, I think a lot of people are worrying about the shorter days, maybe not being able to see their family like they normally would. We're very lucky to be joined today by Dr. Mark Heyman. Mark is a diabetes psychologist. He's also a certified diabetes educator. He has a new podcast called The Diabetes Psychologist. And we spoke to Mark earlier in the year, I think back in April, with some questions about, how to keep emotionally healthy during this really troubling time, which unfortunately is still very much a reality and might be getting harder for people as we head into the holiday season. So I think what we want to do is the staff has a few questions. These are some of the questions we've been hearing a lot. Before we get started, Mark, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm really happy to be here and happy to be able to answer these questions. Hopefully I can be of value here.
I'm sure that you will be. Thanks a lot. And so I think with the first question, I'm going to turn it over to Lala Jackson.
Hi, Dr. Heyman. I'm Lala. I'm a senior project manager here on the team. My question is all around anticipatory anxiety and depression heading into the holidays. I don't live near family. They're not within driving distance. And so I'm gearing up for a holiday on my own. And of course, that's amidst COVID and election and lots of things going on in the world. And so while I kind of thought I had come back to a baseline as far as managing anxiety and depression, it's now going to be a new set of things. And I'm wondering how to manage that, just anticipating that it's coming, being scared of like the day of, and figuring out how I can prep myself best for that.
Yeah, and I think that you use a couple really important words there. One is anticipating the anxiety and the depression, and two is prepping yourself for those things. And so I think that knowing it and recognizing that in yourself that those things may be coming on and that your situation is that you can't see friends and family during this time is really important. And so being able to make a plan and prepare for that in that situation is helpful. So one is kind of knowing what your coping strategies can be and kind of keep, recognizing that things are going to be hard for you. And so put some things in place to be able to help you. So for example, have a time when you can talk to your friends and family on the phone or on FaceTime or on Zoom. And so make a plan so that you know that you can look forward to that and that you have those things to look forward to. Also, that gives you some comfort knowing what to expect, knowing that you may be having a hard time. And so putting some plans in place and putting some structure in place around you that can help you, and having things to look forward to. And recognizing that things are going to be hard, and that there may not be things there may not be much you can do about that right now, but that you can handle, and recognize that you have the ability to handle that, and that you'll get through this, and that we'll all get through this together. That this isn't going to last forever, and that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel whenever that might be.
Hey, Mark, this is Dana. I am the Director of Brand Communications here at Beyond Type 1. It's great to talk to you again. Really appreciate it. So I find myself in kind of a similar situation as Lala, where I'm far from family. I won't be going home for the holidays this year. And I live with Type 1. I also have close family members who live with Type 1. And for us, we have decided and had the kind of hard conversation that like getting on a plane and getting together is just not the right choice for us this year. And I'm really glad we had that conversation, but I'm worried because I know that other people in my sort of close circle are making a different choice. And I am wondering if you have any tips for coping with jealousy or feelings of resentment for people who are friends or even extended family who have decided to make maybe a riskier choice or a different calculation than we are.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the first thing is recognizing that your feelings of jealousy or resentment are normal. And that I would expect you to have those types of feelings because you're making a tough choice and other people may not be, and other people may have a higher risk tolerance than you. And that's a totally normal thing. And so being okay with and recognizing and validating the fact that your feelings, while they're not pleasant, they're a normal part of the process. The second thing is remembering your why. I think that when things get tough, we oftentimes think to ourselves, why am I doing this? And you have a really good reason for not getting on a plane and not going to see family far away. And that's because you care about them and you care about your health and you want to keep yourself safe. And so by keeping that in mind and remembering your why and keeping that in mind when things get tough, that can be a valuable thing for you, because it can keep you strong when those feelings of resentment really come up for you. And also, as I told Lala, remembering that this will be over at some point, and that why is going to be so much more important then, because if you are safe then and your friends and family are safe then that you're trying to protect, then you'll be able to see them and everyone will be safe on the other end of this. If you make a decision and things go awry and they don't turn out as you want them to, then that why is kind of for naught. And so being able to stay strong with that, but also recognizing that you're going to have the feelings and anticipate that. And as I told Lala, kind of put up some support around you where you can talk to your friends and family and be there with them in spirit, if not in person.
That's really great. That helps me out a lot too. I know personally, I get very angry when I see other people having fun, knowing that maybe they shouldn't be doing that, but definitely that I can't be doing that. So I'm going to employ some of those methods.
Yeah, and this is about you, not about them. And certainly we may be thinking that they're making a poor choice, and that's their choice. But if you think about if you start getting resentful because they're being irresponsible, you can kind of come back on that and say, I'm staying strong because I am responsible and I want to make a good choice for my friend, myself and my family, and that can help you to get through it, as opposed to focusing on other people and focusing on what they are doing or what they're not doing.
Great, thank you so much. And so once again, this is Todd, and I actually have a follow-up question to what I asked you back in April, maybe kind of the same question actually. At the time, I had noticed I was eating a lot more, being stuck inside. The gyms had closed down. I wasn't exercising. You had some really great advice on not just maybe how to keep better track of what I'm eating, but also how to not let it bother me if I was eating more and to be kind to myself. I think this is probably going to be advice that will be helpful even not during a pandemic, because I know for me personally, I eat a lot more during the holidays and I am very liable to gain 5, 10, 15 pounds. But being mindful that I'm already in this situation where I'm stuck at home, and kind of one of the only things I can do right now is go for walks outside, in the mornings or afternoon. That's going to be less appealing in the cold and the dark. And I am worried about staying active and also the amount of food I'll be eating. I just went shopping yesterday. I saw the Halloween candy out. I bought a lot of peanut butter cups. Anyways, I won't make this whole thing about my eating habits, but Dr. Heyman, what advice do you have to maybe better pace yourself, to not worry about overeating? If somebody has what they consider to be maybe an issue with eating too much around the holidays, which is exacerbated by being alone and being stuck inside, what advice would you give to that person, hypothetically?
Yeah, the first thing is that don't be so hard on yourself. This is a tough time in general. And then the holidays, aside from the pandemic, are a tough time to eat healthy. And so, have some compassion for yourself. If you're finding yourself making not the healthiest food choices, I think that we all do that around the holidays. I certainly do. The second thing is I always like when people are going to parties or family celebrations, whether or not you're doing that this year, or just being at home with the people that you live with or by yourself, is making a plan for what you're going to eat, especially around the holidays. So if you tell yourself I'm going to be quote unquote good, and I'm not going to eat anything with any carbohydrates in it, or I'm not going to eat anything that's off of my regular meal plan, you're setting yourself up for failure, especially around the holidays and especially with COVID. So, but if you say to yourself, okay, after dinner tonight, I'm gonna have 2 cookies, and that's my plan. And then you go into dinner, and then you go into after dinner, and you have those 2 cookies. Then you followed your plan, and you didn't allow yourself to go beyond that. But having a plan helps you to kind of keep those boundaries up. If you go into after dinner and you say I'm gonna have dessert, but you don't really define what dessert is, it's very easy for it to get out of control. And so, and the same thing goes for going, if you're having a small Thanksgiving gathering with close friends or family, saying, this is my plan for Thanksgiving dinner. I'm gonna have, this for my appetizer. I'm gonna have this during dinner. I'm gonna have this for dessert. And then you can follow that plan. And then you don't feel like you're being, that you're not able to do what you want to do. You're not feeling restricted in your food. You're feeling like you're following the plan that you set out, and hopefully the plan that you set out is going to keep you satisfied, allow you to have the food that you really want to enjoy, and also enjoy the meal that you're having.
Hi, Mark. I'm Tiara, the project manager of Beyond Type 2. I'm someone who likes to stay busy, so I have a lot of trouble just staying still, and that's probably to avoid a lot of the anxiety that comes with living in a pandemic. So for those of us who are always used to being on the go, how can we just slow ourselves down? And do you have any tips for getting into meditation and sticking with it?
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics. And I think that you brought up I like what you said a minute ago, is that you're trying to avoid kind of some of the stress and anxiety. And so we find all kinds of things to do to avoid our negative emotions. It's it's a part of the human experience, whether we're eating, or we're staying busy, or we're drinking. Humans find all kinds of very creative ways to avoid that anxiety. And so recognizing that is a really great first step. You bring up meditation and mindfulness. And for those of you who don't know, mindfulness is being present, staying in the present moment and observing what you're experiencing in the present moment without judging it. And so in your situation, you may be really anxious and you may be really wanting to go and do something and kind of stay busy. And at its core, mindfulness and meditation would be just recognizing that's your desire, but that you're going to choose something differently. You're not going to judge yourself for having that anxiety. You're not going to judge yourself for wanting to do it, but you're going to choose to do something different. You're going to say, my feelings are telling me one thing, but I'm going to choose to just observe what I'm feeling, but not act on it. In terms of meditation and mindfulness, which and mindfulness is a type of meditation, by the way, there are many other types of meditation. Practice is really the key. It's like playing the piano or doing something that takes skill. Mindfulness is a skill, and so you have to practice it. And the best time to practice it is when you're not stressed, or when your stress level is lower, because that builds your muscle. That helps you to learn how to do it when stress hits. And so I love mindfulness apps. There are lots of great ones out there. Headspace and Calm are kind of the two that come to mind, but there are lots of other ones that or you can download free mindfulness exercises from YouTube or from anywhere on the internet. There's a lot of them out there. I really recommend doing it on a regular basis, on a daily basis if possible, for 5 or 10 minutes. And I recommend doing it in a guided way. So having some sort of audio that you can listen to and guide you through the process, because that helps you. And the goal here is not mindfulness meditation practice is not the end. It's actually part of the process. And so the hope is that when you do mindfulness, you sit down for 10 minutes every morning and do it, that when you're out in the world and things get stressful, you're able to draw on those skills, and that then you can use it in that moment and bring yourself back to the present. Because what's happening is when you're trying to stay busy and trying to stay out there, that you're not in the present moment. Your mind is somewhere else. Your body may be in the present, but your mind is somewhere else. And so we want to bring your mind back and just recognize whatever you're experiencing. And at this time of year and in this situation, you may be experiencing some pretty uncomfortable things, and that's okay. But mindfulness can help you to recognize that you can handle it.
That's awesome advice, Mark, and I totally agree. I think you might have also answered my question a little bit. But hi, I'm Jordan. I'm Beyond Type 1's Director of Programs. And I want to ask about getting overwhelmed. So when I get overwhelmed, which I think is bound to happen with so many different things going on at once, and in this lead up to the holiday season, I notice I have trouble focusing in particular. So I'm wondering, do you have any tips for separating out mental distractions and things like anxiety and depression and focusing on what's most important, like work and family and other things?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to what you're saying. It is very easy to get overwhelmed, but when you get overwhelmed, you feel like you have too much on your plate and that you can't handle it all. And so I would recommend a couple of things. The first is mindfulness and working to stay in the present moment. It's really hard to get overwhelmed when you're in the present moment. You get overwhelmed in your mind when your mind kind of wanders off into the future and you start thinking about the what ifs and the what I have to do's and all of those things. But when you're here and now, you have to, it's imperative and to focus on what you're doing right here. It's hard for me to focus on anything in my future when I'm focusing on our conversation right now. And so being able to stay in the present moment and just be here is an important thing. And by the way, when you're trying to be in the present moment and you're trying to stay here, your mind's going to wander off to the future. And that's totally normal and that's expected. And that's okay. But what we want to help you do is when you notice that happening, bring yourself back. The other thing in terms of staying focused is recognizing what are the things that are most important. You know, I make a list of things I need to do every day, and it's rare that I actually achieve them all because I get overwhelmed and also I have too much on my list. But if you're able to if you're able on a daily basis, or if this is too much, even on an hourly basis, say this hour I need to focus on writing this article. This hour I need to focus on spending time with my wife. This hour I need to focus on that. Then it becomes a lot less overwhelming because you have specific times where you're focusing on specific things. And it's hard to get overwhelmed when you're able to focus on that one thing. But when you're scattered and you're focusing on lots of different things at once, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And so kind of breaking it up into whether it's a day or an hour or even just a minute, saying this minute I'm going to focus on this thing, then once that minute's over, then you have permission to move on. And that can help you to not be overwhelmed and to feel less overwhelmed. And when you feel overwhelmed, just bring yourself back to the present and focus on the thing that you have dedicated that time to focus on.
Great. And I think we just have one last question here. It comes from a member of our staff who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but I think it's a very, very important question for everybody to know the answer to, which is, if you do feel like you're struggling with anxiety or depression or loneliness, how do you know when it's time to turn for help? I guess, like, what are there any signs that, like, okay, I really need to turn to someone for help? And then also, if you do find yourself in that situation, do you have advice on where people can go to seek that kind of help?
Absolutely, and that's a really important question. So the short answer is, the first thing that I would try if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxiety or depression, is to do things that have helped you in the past. So whether that's calling a friend or taking a walk or reading a book, and just trying those things out, because those are your first line of defense. Having support, having activities that you enjoy, if you find that those aren't working, there are a couple of signs I would look out for to kind of see whether or not you need a higher level of care or whether you need to have professional help. One is if your emotional state is impacting your ability to live your life as you want to. So your ability to go to school or go to work, it's impacting your relationships, and that's where, and that can be a good sign. Also, if you're feeling hopeless or helpless, or you're not enjoying things in life and you feel like you don't have the ability to enjoy things that you used to enjoy, that's also a great sign, or not a great sign, but a sign that you need help and something to look out for. And in terms of where to get help, that's there are lots of great options for therapy out there right now. And the pandemic has actually been the silver lining to the pandemic is now almost every therapist is doing telemental health. And so you're able to see somebody over video. So it's much easier than having to drive to somebody's office. So you want to look for a therapist. So if your issue is diabetes specific, and you feel like your therapist really needs to understand diabetes to really help you, then there's a great resource. I believe Beyond Type 1 has some information about that, but also the American Diabetes Association and the American Psychological Association have a great resource where you're able to search for therapists who have expertise in diabetes. But if you're dealing with things around the holidays and feeling overwhelmed and dealing with the pandemic, you probably don't need someone with diabetes specific experience. And so I would recommend asking a trusted friend or family if they have a recommendation. if you don't have that sort of support, looking at resources like Psychology Today are a great place to find a therapist. And then also there are some great companies like BetterHelp and Talkspace, which are text-based therapy. And I don't have a lot of experience with those, but from people that I know who have used them, they have actually had great results and they rave about it. So that's another place where you can look to have therapy in a little bit of a different setting, but that can certainly provide you the support that you need during this challenging time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Heyman. And I think I forgot to say at the top, or if I did, I'll just say again, one important thing to note is that you actually do live with type 1 diabetes yourself. So you definitely know that of which you speak. And I did want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your podcast. I've listened to the first 2 episodes. Dr. Heyman does have a new diabetes podcast. So also, if you're just seeking some general advice, not specific to you, on how to cope with these issues around diabetes and anxiety and depression, I think it's another great resource. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and where maybe people can find it?
You bet. So last week I launched the Diabetes Psychologist podcast. You can find it on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere you find your podcasts. And the podcast is about dealing with the tough stuff in diabetes. So we have conversation with people who are dealing with things like diabetes burnout, anxiety, feeling alone, isolated, and really focusing on helping people to find strength and find strategies that they can use to overcome these big challenges. And so we just released a 6-part series on the biggest mental health challenges of living with type 1 diabetes. So things like burnout, anxiety, guilt and shame, cost and logistics, which are really great. And then we'll have a new episode released every Thursday. And there'll be a combination of interviews and conversation with people, me talking about specific issues. And then we're also trying something new out coming up soon, where I'm going to be doing some coaching sessions with people about specific diabetes related issues. And so the first one will be about technology burnout, where I work with somebody, on the podcast, and you can kind of hear the process of helping that person to develop some strategies that he can use to deal with technology burnout. So every Thursday, and then you can also find it on the diabetespsychologist.com, which is my new website. The podcast is there, as well as a lot of other resources for dealing with the hard stuff with diabetes.
Awesome. And we will include a link at the bottom of this video when it gets published as well. And thank you again for joining us today. I know we really appreciate your time, and it's been extremely helpful for me. And on behalf of the team, just thank you, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. Thanks, guys.